The phone rang at 11 p.m. on a Sunday night, and I knew before I answered that my life was about to change. Walter Griffin never called this late. In 37 years of friendship, the man had never once disturbed my sleep. "David, I need you to come to my house. Now. Don't tell Jennifer where you're going." His voice carried something I'd never heard from Walter, the retired oil executive who'd stared down union bosses and corporate raiders without blinking. Fear. Raw, undiluted fear. "Walter, what's going on? Is Dorothy okay?" "Dorothy's fine. This isn't about her. It's about—" He stopped. I could hear him breathing heavily. "Just come, please. I can't say it over the phone." I glanced at the bedroom door. Jennifer's reading light had gone off an hour ago. I could hear her soft snoring through the door, the sound I'd fallen asleep to for 20 years. I grabbed my keys from the nightstand as quietly as I could manage. "I'm on my way." The drive to Walter's estate in Preston Hollow took 23 minutes at that hour. No traffic. Just me and the Dallas night, and a growing knot in my stomach that tightened with every mile. I ran through possibilities in my head. Financial trouble at the church? A health scare? Something with one of his grandkids? Walter had been there when I was a 25-year-old seminary student with fire in my eyes and nothing but faith in my pocket. He'd watched me build Grace Covenant from a rented gymnasium to a 4,500-member megachurch. He'd been there when I buried my father, stood beside me at the graveside when I could barely stand, then listened to me preach the next Sunday because the flock needed me. Walter had seen me at my best and my worst. Whatever this was, whatever had rattled him this badly, it had to be something I couldn't imagine. His wife Dorothy met me at the door in her robe, her face drawn with worry. She was 70 years old and still beautiful in that elegant way some women age. Silver hair perfectly styled even at midnight, posture straight as a dancer's. "He's in the study," she said, her voice tight. "He won't tell me anything. He's been in there since 9, just playing something on his computer over and over. I've never seen him like this, David." She squeezed my arm. "Whatever it is, help him." I found Walter sitting behind his mahogany desk, a glass of whiskey untouched beside him. The room smelled of old books and leather, the same smell it had carried for the 30 years I'd been visiting this house. On his desk sat his laptop, a pair of headphones, and a framed photograph I recognized, the four of us at Grace Covenant's 15th anniversary gala. Walter, Dorothy, Jennifer, and me. We'd been laughing about something when the photographer caught us. I couldn't remember what. "Sit down," Walter said. His eyes were red-rimmed, and his hands trembled slightly as he turned the laptop toward me. "I need you to listen to something. I'm not going to give you context. I just need you to listen." He pressed play. The first sounds were unmistakable, intimate. The kind of sounds that made my collar feel too tight and my throat go dry. Heavy breathing, soft moans. The rhythmic creak of furniture under strain. I recognized my wife's voice immediately. After 20 years of marriage, you know every note she can hit, every way she sounds when she's lost in passion. The male voice took me longer. Not because I didn't know it, but because my mind refused to accept what my ears were telling me. Tyler Brooks, 34 years old. The youth pastor I'd personally mentored and promoted. The young man I'd seen as my spiritual son. The man who'd sat at my dinner table just last week, praising Jennifer's pot roast and discussing expansion plans for the youth group. I listened for 90 seconds before Walter paused it. My heart was hammering so hard I could feel it in my temples. "There's more," Walter said quietly. "It gets worse. Play it." The sounds of intimacy faded, replaced by rustling sheets and soft conversation. Post-coital pillow talk. I forced myself to keep listening. Jennifer's voice, breathless but calculating. "He's becoming irrelevant, you know. The young families are bored. They come for the tradition, but they stay because of you. Tyler, you could lead this church into the next generation." Tyler's response came lazy and satisfied. The board loves him too much. We'd need to shift that somehow. Leave the board to me. Jennifer's tone hardened into something I'd never heard before. Cold, strategic, nothing like the warm woman I'd married. I've been the pastor's wife for 20 years. I know which men have wandering eyes, which marriages are struggling, which ones owe David favors they resent. I know who's been embezzling from their businesses and who's been stepping out on their wives. Give me 6 months. I can move the pieces. And then what? We push David out and I just take over? You take over the church. I take over the worship ministry officially instead of just doing everything anyway. And we take over each other. She laughed. A sound I'd always loved, transformed now into something ugly. We've been careful for 2 years. We can be careful for 6 more months. Tyler's voice dropped lower. What about the kids? Emma, Luke, Grace. They'll never accept this. The kids are adults. They'll adapt. Besides, they love you already. By the time David's out of the picture, they'll be ready to see you as the natural successor. Walter stopped the recording. In the silence that followed, I could hear the grandfather clock in the hallway ticking. Each second felt like a hammer blow to my chest. Play it again, I said. He did. I listened to the whole thing twice more, forcing myself to catch every word, every inflection, every nuance, the whispered promises, the conspiratorial planning, the casual dismissal of everything I'd built, everything I'd sacrificed, everything I'd believed our marriage was. 2 years. She'd said 2 years. 24 months of lies. 730 days of looking me in the eye and pretending to be my partner, my helpmate, my wife. How many people have heard this? I finally asked. My voice sounded strange to my own ears, flat and distant. Walter let out a breath he'd apparently been holding. The email came to 3 of us simultaneously. Me, Gregory Palmer, and Sandra Webb. My mind, which had felt frozen, suddenly clicked into gear with a clarity that surprised me. Gregory runs the finance committee. He's been pushing Tyler's budget expansions for months. Sandra leads women's ministry. She and Jennifer have lunch every Thursday. You think this was targeted? I know it was. Whoever sent this wanted specific people to hear it. People with connections to Tyler, people close to Jennifer. I met Walter's eyes. Someone wanted this to spread in a particular way. The question is, who sent it? Walter slid a piece of paper across the desk, a printout of an email. Anonymous, throwaway email address, probably created just for this. Subject line was, "You should know what happens in room 114 after the lights go out." Room 1014, the choir practice room, where Jennifer recorded her worship albums, where she spent hours alone, she'd always told me, working on arrangements and practicing new songs. I stood up. My legs felt steady, which surprised me. I'd expected to collapse, to weep, to rage, to feel something other than this strange numbness spreading through my chest. Instead, I felt a cold clarity settling over me like a winter frost. "Thank you for telling me, Walter." He looked alarmed. "David, what are you going to do? She's your wife. He's your protege. This could destroy everything you've built." "It could, but it won't." I was already at the door. "Don't tell anyone else about this yet. Not even Dorothy. I need time to think." "David." "I mean it, Walter. This has to be handled correctly. One wrong move and the church suffers. 4,000 families who have nothing to do with my wife's betrayal don't deserve to have their spiritual home blown apart." He nodded slowly. "What can I do?" "Pray. And wait for my call." I didn't go home. Not yet. Instead, I drove to the church and parked in the empty lot, staring at the building I'd raised from nothing. The campus sprawled across 12 acres now. Main sanctuary, fellowship hall, children's wing, administrative building, youth center. We'd broken ground on the youth center just 3 years ago, with Tyler cutting the ribbon and Jennifer singing a dedication song. I remembered thinking at the time how blessed I was to have such a strong team around me. The cross on the steeple was illuminated, a beacon in the darkness. How many times had I looked at that cross and felt God's presence? How many times had Jennifer stood beside me and said she felt it too? The memories came unbidden, uncontrollable. 1995, our first service. 43 people in folding chairs in a rented gymnasium that smelled like floor wax and basketball sweat. Jennifer leading worship with nothing but a keyboard and her voice, her face radiant with conviction. She'd believed in me then, or at least I thought she had. Maybe she'd been calculating even back then, sizing up her opportunity. 2003, breaking ground on the new building. Her hand in mine as we turned the ceremonial shovel. The congregation singing, "Great is thy faithfulness," while she wept with joy. Real tears, I wondered now. Or just performance? 2010, interviewing Tyler for the youth pastor position. A young man fresh from a struggling church in Oklahoma, charismatic and eager, with references that glowed. Jennifer had sat in on the meeting at my invitation. She'd said afterward that she had a good feeling about him. I laughed out loud, alone in my car at 2 in the morning. The sound was harsh and unfamiliar, more bark than laugh. Movement caught my eye. A light had come on in the administrative wing. At this hour, no one should be there. I noted it but didn't investigate. Not yet. I was gathering information now, not making moves. Everything had to be careful. Everything had to be strategic. I got home at 3:30. Jennifer was asleep, her breathing slow and even. I stood in the doorway of our bedroom and watched her for a long moment. Studied the curve of her cheek, the way her hair spread across the pillow, the faint smile on her lips. She looked peaceful, innocent. The way she'd looked for 20 years while apparently harboring thoughts I couldn't begin to fathom. What was she dreaming about? Tyler? Their plans? The future she envisioned where I was pushed aside like yesterday's trash? I went to my home office and started making a list. Denomination bylaws, Section 14.3, misconduct by clergy. Church property recordings, who has access? Tyler's personnel file, original references, need to verify. Joint accounts versus separate assets, what's the financial exposure? Marriage certificate, where is it filed? I found the certificate in the third drawer. 20 years. 3 children. Emma, 25, Luke, 22, Grace, 19. All out of the house now, all adoring their mother. The children, I thought. The children will be the hardest part. Monday morning arrived with brutal normalcy. Staff meeting at 9. I preached a devotional on faithfulness. The irony wasn't lost on me. While Tyler sat in the third row taking notes like the eager student he'd always pretended to be. His pen moved across the paper with practiced efficiency. Occasionally, he'd look up and nod thoughtfully, playing the role of devoted mentee to perfection. Jennifer brought coffee and perched beside me, squeezing my hand during the prayer. Her fingers felt the same as they always had. Warm, familiar, deceiving. I squeezed back. I noticed things I'd missed before. The way Tyler's eyes flicked to her when he thought no one was watching. Just a fraction of a second, but loaded with meaning. The way Jennifer's phone stayed face down on the table. She used to leave it face up, screen visible, nothing to hide. When Tyler cracked a joke about Room 114's great acoustics for recording, Jennifer laughed a little too brightly, and I laughed along with them. Let them think I was blind. Let them think I was the oblivious old husband. Every hour I spent pretending was an hour I could use to prepare. After the meeting, Tyler lingered. "Pastor Mitchell, do you have a minute? I wanted to discuss the upcoming youth retreat." "Of course, Tyler. Walk with me." We strolled through the fellowship hall, past the Sunday school classrooms, out to the garden where we held outdoor baptisms in the summer. Tyler talked about his vision for the retreat: team-building exercises, worship sessions, small group discussions about faith and doubt. His enthusiasm seemed genuine. Maybe it was. Maybe he really did care about the kids in his ministry, even while plotting to steal my church and my wife. That all sounds excellent, I said. Run the budget by Gregory and let's make it happen. Thank you, sir. Your support means everything to me. He clasped my shoulder with one hand, a gesture I'd taught him, actually, back when I was showing him how to connect with congregants. I know I don't say it enough, but you've been like a father to me these past 6 years. I smiled. It took every ounce of willpower I possessed. And you've been like a son to me, Tyler. I hope you know that. After he left, I found our IT administrator in the hallway. His name was Philip Webb, Sandra's husband, though the marriage had been cold for years. They sat on opposite sides of the sanctuary during services, never speaking, never touching, a detail I'd filed away as a pastoral concern and now found useful. Philip, quick question. I'm reviewing our security protocols after that data breach at First Baptist last month. Can you pull the access logs for the recording system in room 114? I want to see who's been using it and from where. He didn't hesitate. Sure, Pastor. I can have that to you by tomorrow. Appreciate it. Keep this between us for now. Don't want to start any rumors about security problems. He nodded, and I moved on before he could ask questions. Tuesday, I requested a meeting with Gregory Palmer under the guise of discussing next year's budget. Gregory was a numbers man, sharp, ambitious, and perpetually frustrated that I didn't rubber stamp every expansion he proposed. He'd been pushing hard for Tyler's initiatives lately. At the time, I'd thought it was just his usual enthusiasm for growth. Now I wondered what else was behind it. Tyler's been pushing for a young leaders retreat, Gregory said, sliding a folder across the table. Weekend at a resort in Hill Country. $15,000, but the ROI in terms of volunteer retention. I held up a hand. Show me the attendee list. He flipped to a page. There it was. Jennifer Mitchell, listed as a worship consultant. I scanned the rest of the names. Mostly young adults from the church, the kind of people Tyler cultivated as his personal following. The kind of people who would naturally support him if there were ever a power struggle. This is good work, Gregory, I said, keeping my voice neutral. Let me review it and get back to you. He left looking confused but pleased. He thought I was finally coming around on the youth budget. He had no idea I was building a case. That evening, I called Bishop Harold Turner at the denomination's regional office. Harold had mentored me decades ago, back when I was still figuring out what kind of pastor I wanted to be. He was 70 now, slower than he used to be, but his mind was still razor sharp. He'd seen every scandal imaginable in his 40 years of ministry: affairs, embezzlement, abuse, fraud. Nothing surprised him anymore. David, this isn't a social call, is it? No, sir. I need to understand the formal process for investigating clergy misconduct. A long pause. Are we talking hypothetically? We're talking about my church, my wife, my youth pastor. Another pause, longer this time. I could hear Harold breathing on the other end of the line, the wheeze of age and too many cigarettes in his younger years. Tell me everything. I did. The recording, the conversation, the conspiracy to push me out. When I finished, Harold was quiet for nearly a minute. The denomination can investigate, he finally said, but you'll need evidence, documentation, everything buttoned up tight before we make any moves. Right now you have an anonymous recording. Damning, yes, but easily contested. She could claim it was doctored. He could claim it was taken out of context. We need more. I'm working on it. David. His voice softened. How are you holding up? Not as a pastor, but as a man? I considered the question. Honestly, I don't know yet. I think I'm still in shock. Part of me keeps expecting to wake up and discover this was all a nightmare. That's normal. When Margaret had her affair back in '92, he stopped abruptly. I hadn't known about that. Well, let's just say I understand what you're feeling. The important thing right now is to stay focused. Don't confront her until we're ready. Can you do that? I can do anything I have to do. Good man. I'll start the paperwork on our end. You gather the evidence. And David, call me anytime, day or night. You shouldn't carry this alone. Wednesday brought the IT logs. Philip delivered them personally, a thick folder of printouts clearly curious about what I was looking for, but too professional to ask. I thanked him and closed my office door. The recordings from room 114 were automatically saved to a cloud server. Access was limited to 3 people, Jennifer, Tyler, and me. But someone else had accessed the September archive from an outside IP address, an address that traced back to Gregory Palmer's home computer. I sat back in my chair, processing this new information. Gregory hadn't just received the anonymous email. Gregory had extracted the recording in the first place. But why would he expose something that could benefit his ally? I dug deeper. Public records, financial databases, county court filings. The picture that emerged was ugly. Gregory's consulting company had lost a major contract 6 months ago, their biggest client representing 40% of their revenue. He'd been borrowing against his retirement fund. He'd taken out a second mortgage on his house. He was sinking fast. The pieces clicked together. Gregory wasn't trying to expose Jennifer and Tyler. He was gathering leverage, blackmail material. He probably planned to use it to secure his position, maybe push for a bigger role in church leadership, maybe just extract money to cover his debts. Someone else had sent the recording to the board before Gregory could make his play, which meant someone else knew about the affair. Someone who wanted the truth out. The question was, who? Thursday evening, my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Meet me at Rosie's Diner on Highway 12. Come alone, 7 p.m. I have more. Rosie's was a truck stop 20 miles outside the city, the kind of place where nobody looked twice at strangers having private conversations in back booths. I arrived 15 minutes early, ordered coffee, and waited. She was younger than I expected. Late 20s, dark hair pulled back in a practical ponytail, dressed in the business casual uniform of someone who'd come straight from a corporate job. She spotted me immediately, not hard, since I was the only person in the diner wearing a suit, and slid into the booth across from me without preamble. Pastor Mitchell, I'm Carla Simmons. The name rang a bell. You used to volunteer with the youth group. Until 2 years ago. Her eyes were hard, the eyes of someone who had seen too much and learned not to trust easily. Did you ever wonder why I left? The official reason was a job opportunity in Houston. The real reason was Tyler Brooks. She pulled a manila folder from her bag and set it between us. He tried to groom me, started with compliments, how dedicated I was, how the kids loved me, how I had real leadership potential. Then escalated to inappropriate texts. Eventually, he cornered me in the church parking lot after a youth event and told me he'd been thinking about me constantly. Said he felt like we had a special connection. My stomach turned. What happened? I shut it down. Told him I wasn't interested, that what he was doing was inappropriate, that he needed to step back. He apologized, very smooth, very practiced, and said he'd misread the situation. She shook her head. I should have known then. That apology was too polished. He'd given it before. Did you report this? To Jennifer. Carla's laugh was bitter, devoid of any real humor. She was the designated safe person for complaints like that, the pastoral care coordinator, the one we were supposed to trust. She leaned forward. She told me I must have misread the situation, that Tyler was just enthusiastic about mentoring. that I was probably flattering myself by thinking a handsome young pastor would be interested in someone like me. She buried the report, made me feel crazy, and then made sure I knew my volunteer position was no longer needed. Jennifer did that? She protected him. And I found out later that I wasn't the first. There were others before me, women who had uncomfortable experiences with Tyler. One of them confronted Jennifer directly, told her exactly what Tyler had said and done. You know what Jennifer said? Some women see things that aren't there. Maybe you need to examine your own heart. I thought about all the times Jennifer had praised Tyler's ministry, all the times she'd advocated for his budget, his programs, his expanded role. I'd thought it was because she believed in his work. Now I understood. She was protecting her investment. Why are you coming forward now? I asked. Because I'm not going to let them get away with it. Carla pushed the folder closer. I work in IT security now. The church's cloud storage has holes you could drive a truck through. Same vulnerabilities I flagged 2 years ago, which nobody bothered to fix. When I heard through the grapevine that Tyler was being considered for a bigger role, I decided to check what was actually on those servers. You found the recording. I found a lot more than that. 3 months of recordings from room 114. Tyler wasn't just having an affair with your wife. He was using that room like a private meeting space. And the things he said when he thought no one was listening. She shook her head. The affair is the least of it. He talked about the church like it was a business opportunity. Jennifer talked about you like you were an obstacle to be removed. I looked at the folder. What else is in here? Emails from Jennifer assuring me the misunderstanding was handled. Screenshots of Tyler's texts. I saved them before I deleted them, just in case. Names and contact information for 2 other women who had similar experiences, and transcripts of the other recordings, the ones I didn't send to the board. Why send the one recording to 3 board members instead of bringing everything to me? Because I didn't know who I could trust. Her voice cracked slightly, the first sign of vulnerability she'd shown. For all I knew, you were in on it, or you'd cover it up to protect the church, the way Jennifer covered up for Tyler. I figured if multiple people got the evidence, at least one of them would be honest. I reached across the table and placed my hand over hers. Thank you, Carla. I'm sorry the church failed you. I'm sorry I failed you. She pulled her hand back, but not unkindly. Don't apologize yet. Make it right. That's the only apology I need. Would you be willing to provide this documentation to the denomination if it comes to a formal investigation? She nodded slowly. Yes, but only if my name stays out of it until absolutely necessary. I have a career now, a life. I don't want Tyler's mess following me any more than it already has. Done. You have my word. She stood up to leave, then paused. One more thing. The woman who confronted Jennifer directly, the one Jennifer gaslit, her name is Denise Thornton. She left the church about a year before I did. Last I heard, she was still in Dallas working for a nonprofit downtown. She might have more to tell you. I wrote down the name. Thank you. Good luck, Pastor. You're going to need it. Friday. I made a phone call I'd been dreading. Tyler's previous church was in a small town outside Oklahoma City. A congregation of maybe 200, the kind of place where everyone knows everyone's business. The senior pastor, Reverend Daniel Foster, answered on the 3rd ring. Reverend Foster, this is David Mitchell from Grace Covenant in Dallas. I hired Tyler Brooks based partly on your reference 6 years ago. I'm calling because some concerns have arisen about his conduct. Silence stretched across the line. When Daniel spoke again, his voice was heavy with something that sounded like guilt. I've been waiting for this call for 6 years, Pastor Mitchell. Tell me. Tyler left here under a cloud. There were concerns about his relationship with a married woman in our congregation. Nothing proven, nothing formally charged, but enough smoke that I couldn't ignore the possibility of fire. We investigated quietly, but she refused to cooperate. said nothing happened, defended him completely. Then she divorced her husband 3 months after Tyler left. Did you share this in your reference? The silence was answer enough. We gave him a neutral reference to avoid a lawsuit, Daniel finally admitted. His father is a lawyer. Did you know that? Made it very clear that any negative statements about Tyler would result in legal action. We didn't have enough evidence to prove anything, and I didn't want to put the church through that kind of fight. He paused. I should have warned you, David. I was a coward. I took the easy path. I've regretted it every day since. What happened to the woman? Last I heard, she moved to Kansas somewhere, trying to rebuild her life. She had 2 kids. They stayed with their father. The whole thing tore that family apart. Another pause. Tyler has a pattern. He targets women who are vulnerable, who are in positions where exposure would ruin them. Married women with reputations to protect. He's careful. He's patient. And he's very, very good at playing the victim when things fall apart. Thank you, Daniel. This helps. I hope you can stop him. I hope you can do what I didn't have the courage to do. I hung up and sat in my car for a long time, staring at nothing. The pattern was clear now. Tyler Brooks wasn't just an adulterer. He was a predator. He used churches as hunting grounds, moving from congregation to congregation when the ground grew too hot. And my wife of 20 years, wasn't a victim. She was his accomplice. Saturday, my daughter Emma visited unexpectedly. 25 years old, sharp as a tack, with her mother's eyes and my stubborn streak. She'd driven up from Austin, where she worked as a marketing director for a tech startup. Successful, independent, the kind of woman who always knew when something was wrong. She found me in the backyard, staring at the pool we'd installed when she was 10. The same pool where I'd taught her to swim, where we'd hosted dozens of youth group barbecues, where Jennifer and I had sat together on summer nights watching the stars. Dad, you look like garbage. Thanks, sweetheart. Love you too. She sat beside me on the patio chair. Seriously, Mom said you've been distracted, sleeping in your office some nights. You've lost weight. I can see it in your face. What's going on? Work stress. Nothing you need to worry about. Don't give me that. I've known you my whole life. This isn't work stress. She turned to face me directly, her expression fierce. Are you sick? Is it cancer? Whatever it is, just tell me. I'm not sick, Emma, I promise. She didn't look convinced. Mom's been weird lately too, on her phone constantly, distracted. She mentioned big changes coming without explaining what. Emma shook her head. You two aren't getting divorced or something, are you? I forced a smile that felt like cardboard on my face. Everything's fine, just a busy season. But I made a mental note. When this exploded, and it would, Emma needed to hear the truth from me first. All of them did. Emma, Luke, Grace. They deserved the truth before Jennifer could spin it, before she could paint herself as the victim and me as the villain. The next 3 weeks were the longest of my life. I submitted a formal complaint to Bishop Turner, complete with the audio recording, Carla's documentation, the information from Daniel Foster, and the financial records suggesting Gregory Palmer's attempted blackmail scheme. The denomination opened a confidential investigation. Tyler and Jennifer were placed on a watch list, their activities monitored without their knowledge. IT access logs were subpoenaed as official evidence. And through it all, I had to keep pretending. Every Sunday, I stood in the pulpit and preached about faithfulness, about commitment, about the sacred bonds of marriage, while Jennifer sat in the front row, glowing with false devotion. Every staff meeting, I smiled at Tyler and discussed youth group initiatives, listened to his ideas with apparent interest, praised his work while imagining what it would feel like to put my fist through his face. Every night, I lay beside the woman who had betrayed me in every possible way, felt her body warm against mine, and pretended to sleep The mask was necessary. Harold Turner had been clear about that. If Jennifer knew she was under investigation, she could destroy evidence, delete texts, burn documents, coordinate stories with Tyler. The element of surprise was our only advantage. I had to wait. But wearing that mask was eating me alive. I started losing weight, 12 pounds in 3 weeks. Sleep came in fragments, an hour here, 2 hours there, always interrupted by dreams I didn't want to remember. Dreams where Jennifer and Tyler laughed at me while the church burned around us. Dreams where my children looked at me with hatred in their eyes. Church members commented that I looked tired. "Pastor Mitchell, are you taking care of yourself?" they'd ask after services. I'd smile and deflect and add another crack to the mask that was slowly killing me. Jennifer became more attentive in response to my withdrawal. She planned a surprise anniversary dinner, 21 years coming up in November. She bought new lingerie that I found hidden in her closet while looking for evidence. She touched me more often, laughed at my jokes more loudly, played the devoted wife with a dedication that would have been impressive if it hadn't been so transparently calculated. I played along, I squeezed her hand. I told her I loved her. And every word tasted like ash in my mouth. The call came on October 16th. Harold Turner's voice was grave but carried an undertone of satisfaction. "We have enough to proceed, David. Tyler's being summoned for a formal interview next Tuesday. Jennifer will be called separately on Thursday. What do I do in the meantime?" "Nothing visible. Stay clear of the office until both interviews are complete. We can't have any appearance of interference. Let the process work." Understood. But there was one piece of business I needed to handle myself. Something outside the denomination's jurisdiction. Gregory Palmer. I invited Gregory to lunch at Sullivan's Steakhouse, the kind of place where business deals were made and secrets were traded over aged ribeye and overpriced wine. He arrived looking pleased with himself, probably assuming I was finally ready to approve his budget expansions. I waited until we'd ordered before dropping the hammer. "I know about the recording, Gregory." The color drained from his face. His hand, reaching for his water glass, froze in midair. "I'm sorry?" "I know you accessed the church's cloud storage from your home computer on September 3rd. I know you extracted the audio file from room 114 before someone else sent it to the board." I took a bite of my salad, keeping my voice conversational. Two businessmen discussing quarterly figures. "What I don't know is whether you were planning to blackmail Tyler, blackmail Jennifer, or use the leverage to maneuver yourself into a better position once they pushed me out. Care to enlighten me?" Gregory's hand trembled slightly as he lowered it to the table. "David, I can explain. I'm not interested in explanations. I'm interested in outcomes." I met his eyes and held them. "Here's what's going to happen. You're going to resign from the board, effective immediately. You're going to cite personal reasons, family obligations, business pressures, whatever story you want to tell. And you're never going to speak about any of this to anyone, ever. And if I refuse, then I report your attempted blackmail to the denomination and to the police if they're interested in pursuing extortion charges." I leaned forward. "You're a desperate man who made a desperate choice, Gregory. Your company is failing. Your retirement is gone. You saw an opportunity and you took it. I understand that. But your opportunity evaporated the moment someone else sent that recording to the board before you could use it. Who sent it? Does it matter? The point is your leverage is gone. Your only play now is to walk away quietly before anyone else finds out what you tried to do. I'm giving you that chance. Take it." He stared at me for a long moment, and I watched something break behind his eyes, the final collapse of whatever scheme he'd been building. "I'll have my resignation letter to you by Monday." "Good man," I signaled for the waiter. "Lunch is on me." Tyler's interview happened on a Tuesday in the denomination's regional office in Dallas. I wasn't there. Harold had been clear about that. But I got a full report afterward. They'd summoned him under the pretense of a routine credentialing review, the kind of administrative checkup that happened every few years for all clergy. Tyler had arrived confident and smiling, wearing his best suit, full of the easy charm that had fooled me for 6 years. He'd shaken hands with the panel, complimented the coffee, made small talk about the Cowboys season. That confidence lasted about 90 seconds. The panel had everything. The audio recording, Carla's documentation, the statements from Tyler's previous church, the IT logs showing his patterns of accessing room 114 during off hours. They laid it out piece by piece, methodically, dispassionately, and watched him squirm. He tried denial first. I don't know what you're talking about. Then, minimization. Whatever happened was consensual between adults. Then deflection. This is clearly a personal vendetta against me. Then, when those failed, he tried throwing Jennifer under the bus. She pursued me, he reportedly said, his voice cracking. From the very beginning, she made it clear what she wanted. I was weak, I admit that. I gave in when I should have been stronger. But she was the aggressor. She was the one who planned everything. The panel was unmoved. His credentials were suspended pending a full hearing. He was instructed to have no contact with any Grace Covenant staff or congregants. He left the building looking like a man who had just watched his entire future collapse. Jennifer's interview was Thursday. She walked in expecting to discuss worship programming, some routine matter about next year's Easter services. She was wearing the lavender dress she saved for special occasions, her hair freshly done, her confidence unshakable. She walked into a room with 3 senior denominational officials and a recording device. They played the audio. I wasn't there for her reaction, but Harold described it to me later. Shock first. Genuine, unfeigned shock that the evidence existed at all. Then anger, hot and immediate. Then tears, the kind she'd perfected over years of emotional manipulation. Then, when she realized the extent of what they had, cold calculation. I want a lawyer. That's your right, Mrs. Mitchell, but this isn't a criminal proceeding. This is a credentialing review. Your cooperation, or lack thereof, will be noted. Her credentials were suspended alongside Tyler's. Jennifer came home that evening around 7. I heard her car pull into the driveway, heard the garage door open and close, heard her footsteps in the hall. She'd been crying. I could tell by the heaviness of her walk, the way she paused in the kitchen before coming to find me. I was waiting for her in the living room, sitting in my favorite chair with the divorce papers already prepared on the coffee table between us. I know everything, Jennifer. I've known for weeks. She stopped in the doorway, her face cycling through shock, fear, and finally a hard, calculating anger I'd never seen before. Or maybe I'd seen it all along and simply refused to recognize it. You've been spying on me. I've been investigating you. There's a difference. I gestured to the chair across from me. Sit down. We need to talk. She didn't sit. Instead, she began pacing, her heels clicking against the hardwood floor. How could you? After everything we've built together, everything I've sacrificed, everything you've sacrificed. The words came out harder than I intended. Tell me, Jennifer, what exactly have you sacrificed? You've had a comfortable life for 20 years, a beautiful home, 3 healthy children, a husband who loved you, who trusted you, who gave you every opportunity to build your ministry alongside his, and who neglected me, who was always at the church, always with the congregation, always giving himself to everyone except his own wife. She stopped pacing and turned to face me. Do you know how lonely it's been? Sleeping beside a man whose heart belongs to 4,000 strangers. Don't. The word came out quiet but sharp enough to cut. Don't you dare pretend to be the victim here. I heard the recording, Jennifer. All of it. Not just the sounds of you and Tyler doing whatever you were doing in that room. The conversation afterward, the planning, the scheming. I stood up and faced her directly. You said I was becoming irrelevant. You told him to give you 6 months and you'd move the pieces. You talked about which board members have wandering eyes, which marriages are struggling, using their weaknesses against them to get what you wanted. I was venting. People say things they don't mean. You buried reports about Tyler. Carla Simmons came to you, told you exactly what he'd done, and you made her feel crazy. You protected a predator so you could use him for your own purposes. Jennifer's face went white. She's lying. She always had a crush on Tyler. She imagined 2 other women, Jennifer, at least 2 others. And I spoke to Tyler's previous church. You know what happened there? The same pattern. A married woman whose life was destroyed while Tyler walked away clean. And you knew. You had to know. She was silent for a long moment. When she spoke again, her voice had changed. Harder, colder, stripped of any pretense of innocence. What do you want, David? I pushed the divorce papers toward her. I want you gone. I want this marriage ended. I want you to sign these papers, take your half of the assets, and disappear from my life as completely as possible. She picked up the papers and flipped through them. Her lawyer's training, before she'd become a full-time pastor's wife, showed in the way she scanned the key paragraphs. 50-50 split, that's generous. It's Texas law. You're entitled to half. I won't fight that. And the church? You're already suspended. After the full hearing, you'll be permanently revoked. That's not my decision. That's the denomination's. She set the papers down. Her eyes met mine, and in that moment, I saw the woman I'd married stripped of all disguise, the calculated ambition, the cold pragmatism, the utter absence of remorse. The children will never forgive you for this, she said. You're destroying their family. The children will learn the truth, all of it. From me, before you have a chance to spin it. If they choose to blame me for not being enough man to keep my wife satisfied, that's their choice. But they'll make it with full information. You're going to tell them? For the first time, something like genuine fear flickered across her face. About Tyler? About everything? About everything. They'll hate me. Maybe. That's a consequence you'll have to live with. I moved toward the door. You have 30 days to respond to those papers. I suggest you find somewhere else to stay tonight. This is my home, too. It was. It isn't anymore. She stared at me for a long moment, and something shifted behind her eyes. The final death of whatever relationship we'd once had. When she spoke again, her voice was ice. You're making a mistake, David. I know things about you. Things that could... There's nothing you could say about me that would compare to what I know about you. Go ahead. Threaten me. It won't change anything. She grabbed her keys and walked out. I heard her car start, heard the engine fade into the distance, and then I sat down heavily on the couch and let myself shake. I called Emma, Luke, and Grace for a family meeting the following Saturday. No Jennifer, no excuses. Just me and my children, gathered around the dining room table where we'd shared 1,000 meals and 1,000 memories. I told them everything. I showed them the evidence, not to poison them against their mother, but because they were adults who deserved the truth. I watched their faces as comprehension dawned, as disbelief gave way to horror, as horror gave way to grief. Emma's reaction was fury, hot and immediate. I knew something was wrong. I asked Mom point-blank last month if everything was okay, and she looked me in the eye and lied to my face. She was crying now, angry tears that streaked her makeup. How could she do this? How could she do this to you? To us? Luke went quiet. He'd always been the contemplative one, processing internally rather than externally. He stared at the table for a long time before saying, I need time to think about this. I can't. I can't react right now. Grace sobbed. She'd always been closest to Jennifer, the youngest, the one who'd inherited her mother's love of music and worship. There has to be some explanation. Maybe she was going through something. Maybe if you just talked to her. I talked to her, sweetheart. She wasn't sorry. She wasn't remorseful. She was angry that she got caught. I reached for her hand. Your mother made choices, terrible choices. She hurt me, she hurt this family, she hurt other women who trusted her. But she's still your mother. How you relate to her going forward is up to you. I won't ask you to choose sides. I only ask that you know the truth. Grace pulled her hand away and fled the room. I let her go. I could have destroyed Jennifer publicly. I could have stood before 4,500 people and announced that their worship leader had been sleeping with the youth pastor while plotting to steal the church. I could have named names, shared recordings, burned everything to the ground. I chose not to. The Sunday after the confrontation, I addressed the congregation with a carefully prepared statement. I'm stepping away from Grace Covenant for a season. This is for personal and family reasons I won't discuss in detail. I ask for your prayers, not your questions. Bishop Turner has appointed interim leadership. Good people who will shepherd you well in my absence. I'll return to ministry when God calls me back. Until then, I need to heal. What I didn't say. Jennifer's name. Tyler's name. The affair. The conspiracy. What the congregation heard. Their pastor was struggling. His wife was suddenly absent from the worship team. Tyler had moved on to other opportunities. Rumors flew, but I refused to engage with them. Let the truth emerge in whispers and implications. The church would survive. The divorce finalized on November 28th, the day before Thanksgiving. Jennifer got half of everything, but she didn't get the things that mattered. I spent Thanksgiving with Emma, Luke, and Grace. We ordered Chinese food, none of us felt like cooking, and watched old movies until midnight. We didn't talk about Jennifer. We didn't need to. I learned later what happened to Jennifer during those months. Without Tyler, without the church, without the marriage, she spiraled. She tried to find a new church home, but the evangelical covenant network is tight-knit. Word travels in those circles faster than wildfire. Everyone knew what she'd done. Maybe not the specific details, but enough. She was politely welcomed as a member at a few congregations, but never invited to lead, never asked to serve, never trusted with anything that mattered. She applied for worship positions at churches outside the network. But references are a tricky thing, and Jennifer had burned her bridges thoroughly. When people called me, I simply said, I'm not the right person to speak to Jennifer's professional qualifications. That non-answer spoke volumes to anyone with ears to hear. By February, she'd taken a part-time job as a receptionist at a dental office. The pastor's wife, who once commanded a worship team of 40 people, reduced to scheduling root canals and processing insurance claims. I took no pleasure in this, or at least I tried not to. Some dark part of me felt a grim satisfaction that I wasn't proud of. Tyler fared worse. He moved back to Oklahoma immediately after his suspension, lived with his parents for a while in the room he'd had as a teenager, then scraped together enough for a small apartment near Tulsa. Night shifts at a warehouse, loading trucks in the cold and heat, earning in a week what he used to make in a day as a youth pastor. He kept sending out resumes to churches, kept getting rejections or silence. His name had become toxic. One pastor in Florida seemed genuinely interested, called him 3 times, discussed vision and ministry philosophy, then called back a week later with one final question. We did some additional research and found concerning information about your departure from Grace Covenant. Can you explain? Tyler tried. The pastor thanked him politely and never called again. By spring, Tyler had stopped applying for ministry positions altogether. Some doors, once closed, stay closed forever. December through March, I rented a cabin in the hill country, 3 months of solitude, reading, praying, hiking, processing the wreckage of my marriage and trying to figure out who I was without it. The cabin was small. 2 rooms, a wood-burning stove, a porch that looked out over rolling hills covered in live oaks and cedar. I brought books I'd been meaning to read for years. Biographies of faith leaders who'd faced crisis. Theological works on suffering and redemption. Poetry that I'd always thought was too sentimental but now hit me like hammer blows. The betrayal wasn't the hardest part. I'd made peace with that, or at least I was learning to. Jennifer had made her choices. Tyler had made his. I couldn't control their actions, only my response. The hardest part was the blindness. How had I missed it for 2 years? The late nights she attributed to worship team rehearsals. The phone calls she stepped away to take. The new spark in her eyes that I'd thought was spiritual renewal, but was actually something far more carnal. I was supposed to be a shepherd, trained to see the wolves circling my flock. And I'd let one into my own bed. The silence surrounded me now. 20 years of marriage, and I was alone. The bed felt too big. The meals felt too quiet. Sometimes I'd hear a sound in the other room and turn, expecting Jennifer, before remembering that she was gone. But the silence taught me things. It taught me that I'd been running so hard for so long, building the church, counseling the congregation, managing the staff, that I'd forgotten how to be still. It taught me that my identity had become tangled up in my ministry in unhealthy ways. Without the title of senior pastor, without the role of husband, who was David Mitchell? I spent a lot of time on that porch, watching the hills change color as winter turned to spring, asking God questions I knew He wouldn't answer directly. Not, why did this happen? I understood human nature well enough to know that why was the wrong question. More like, what now? And who am I? And is there anything left worth building? The answers came slowly. A Bible verse that hit differently than it had before. A conversation with a stranger at a gas station. A moment of clarity during a long hike when the sunset painted the sky in colors I'd forgotten existed. One evening, I drove to a nearby town for groceries and passed a small country church. White clapboard building, hand-painted sign that said, First Baptist Church of Fredericksburg, all welcome. Maybe 50 members on a good Sunday. Something made me pull over. Something made me walk inside for their Wednesday night service. Nobody knew me there. I wasn't Pastor David Mitchell, leader of a megachurch. I was just a tired man in a flannel shirt, sitting in the back pew with calloused hands and hollow eyes. I let the simple worship wash over me. Hymns from my childhood. A sermon about perseverance that was clearly written by someone who had known suffering firsthand. After the service, the pastor found me. Elderly, stooped, with a face weathered by years and eyes that had seen everything but still sparkled with kindness. His name was Robert, and he'd been serving that small congregation for 43 years. First time here? Yes, sir. You look like a man carrying something heavy. I nodded, not trusting my voice. He put a hand on my shoulder, a gentle touch, the touch of a true shepherd. Whatever it is, son, God's not done with you yet. He never is. The story keeps going even when we think we've reached the end. I wept then. Right there in that little country church in front of a stranger I'd never see again. I wept for everything I'd lost and everything I still hoped to find. April brought a call from Bishop Turner. His voice sounded lighter than it had in months, less burdened, more hopeful. David, I've got something for you. There's a church in Austin that needs a pastor. New Hope Community Church, 600 members, good people, solid foundation. They've been struggling since their pastor retired last year. Looking for someone with experience, someone who's been through the fire and come out the other side. Why me? Because they specifically asked for someone who understands brokenness. Someone who can relate to congregants who are hurting, Their previous pastor was a good man, but he'd never faced real adversity. They want someone different. He paused. I think it might be exactly what you need too. I drove down the following Saturday. Austin was different from Dallas. Younger, more eclectic, less polished. The church building was 30 years old and showing its age. The sanctuary could hold maybe 700 people, but felt intimate rather than grand. I met with the board, 8 men and women ranging from their 30s to their 70s. They asked hard questions. About my divorce. About what I'd learned. About whether I could lead without becoming bitter. I answered honestly. I didn't sugarcoat anything. The following Sunday, I preached a guest sermon on redemption and new beginnings. The congregation listened with an attention I hadn't experienced in years. Not the polished attention of a mega-church crowd used to entertainment, but the hungry attention of people seeking something real. They voted unanimously to extend a call. I accepted. A year later, New Hope had grown to nearly 900 members. I'd published a book. I was dating cautiously. Life was different, smaller, quieter, more honest. Then the letter came. Handwritten, from Tulsa. Tyler Brooks. He wrote about counseling, about understanding his patterns, about trying to become someone trustworthy. He wrote that Jennifer had pursued him, not the other way around, that she'd been planning something like this for years, that he was the first opportunity who'd said yes. I read it 3 times. Then I set it aside. I didn't respond. The letter wasn't asking for anything, but it gave me closure. Confirmation that the destruction of my marriage wasn't my failure alone. Sunday morning at New Hope Community Church. The sanctuary was full. I stood at the pulpit and opened my Bible to Genesis 50. You intended to harm me, I read, but God intended it for good. I looked out at the congregation, people I'd come to love, people who'd given a broken man a chance to rebuild. God doesn't stop us from walking into the fire, but He walks through it with us. And when we come out the other side, we're different, refined, still scarred, but stronger in the broken places. I paused, letting the words settle. Whatever fire you're walking through today, you're not walking alone. After the service, a young couple approached me. Newlyweds, terrified, holding hands like they were drowning. Pastor Mitchell, we need help. We're going through something, and we don't know who to trust. I looked at them, so young, so scared, and felt the weight of everything I'd survived pressing down on me, but also the hope, the possibility. Come to my office, I said. Tell me what's happening. We'll figure it out together. I led them down the hallway, past the photographs and the children's drawings, past all the signs of a community that had chosen to trust me again. Through the fire. That was the only way. You walked through and you came out different. Still standing. Still breathing. Still reaching out a hand. I opened my office door. Now, I said, tell me everything.